In November 2025, my husband and I went to Cuba for the first time. It was a wonderful experience. I'm going to tell you all about it today with a focus on the finances. Maybe this isn't normal, but I really enjoy going through our spending after a trip and seeing how it compares to our plan. And yes, by plan, I just mean a budget. For some people, this post-trip reckoning is the worst, most stressful part of travel. How much damage did we do? But because I plan meticulously before a trip, I'm not stressed about our spending during the trip. And since we set the money aside ahead of time, I don't have to worry about what the credit card bill is going to look like a month or two after the trip. I'm Stephanie, and I talk about frugal living and budgeting on sixfiguresunder.com. I love planning frugal trips for my family, so if you're into frugal living and frugal travel, I hope you'll follow along. Before our Cuba adventure, I shared our budget for our trip, so now I'm going to go through each category to see how our actual spending compares. I hope you'll stay to the end where I'll tell you the absolute best part of the trip. Okay, the flights. The flights were actually the impetus for our whole trip, so I knew the exact cost before we even set our budget. Thanks to a $300 Southwest travel voucher when our luggage arrived late on the way home from a previous trip, and the Southwest Companion Pass, which allowed Mike to only have to pay the taxes and fees associated with the international flight, we saved big on airfare. What would normally cost over $1,000 only cost us $315 for both of us. Okay, on to experiences. We spent time in 3 different places in Cuba: Varadero, Viñales, and Havana. Since our stated reason for going to Cuba, which is required by the US government, was support for the Cuban people, we plan to spend more freely on experiences than we normally would. We're really good at seeking out free or inexpensive experiences when we travel normally, but this trip was different. Our spending on these experiences was putting money directly into the hands of wonderful Cuban people who were supporting themselves and their families, and that was our goal. For the experiences, I'll list the costs for the 2 of us, not including tips. We tipped too, of course, but I have a different budget category for tips that I'll show you in a minute. For some of these excursions, we knew the prices ahead of time. For others, we didn't know until the opportunity presented itself. Okay, first in Varadero. We went on a snorkeling experience that I found on Airbnb that included transportation from Havana to Varadero. We snorkeled in the ocean and in a cenote, a cave, on the way to Varadero. Then we went to the beautiful white sand beach in Varadero. The cost was $190. Varadero is a long, skinny peninsula, 13 miles long and no more than 3/4 of a mile at its widest point. We were staying at an Airbnb close to the mainland, but we wanted to see the rest of the peninsula. We took the hop-on, hop-off bus to the end of the peninsula and back, a trip of about an hour, so we could see everything. The cost for that was $10. We loved going out to Viñales, named a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its traditional agriculture of fruit, vegetables, coffee, and tobacco, and its karst landscape, lots of limestone caves. We took an authentic tour, also found on Airbnb, that included transportation from Havana and took us to the homes or farms of 3 families. We learned all about how coffee and tobacco are grown. We enjoyed a beautiful meal that was completely grown or raised on that land. We rode horses and met really wonderful people. The trip included free Cuban cigars and organic coffee beans grown on site too, but neither of us smoke or drink coffee, so we let others enjoy those. The cost was $165. We didn't go back to Havana with our tour group, but we stayed a few nights in Viñales instead. Our Airbnb host gave us some excursion options. He's the community's dentist, so he has lots of connections with people. Our first adventure was a campesino tour given by a pineapple farmer who farms full-time but does tours on the side when the opportunity arises. We rode in his ox cart and learned about farming, local fossils, life in the country generally, and in the area specifically. We participated in the process of making coffee from start to finish, which is funny because we didn't drink it afterwards. We pressed sugar cane and drank cane juice, and ate a country ice cream cone, which was a small pineapple carved upside down. All of that cost $70 for the two of us. On another day in Vinales, we spent half a day on horseback riding across the beautiful valley surrounded by mountains. We explored an amazing deep cave that has a torrential river through it half of the year, but was more accessible during our visit. An authentic and delicious Cuban countryside lunch was included in the tour. The cost was $90. Since our Airbnb was only a mile or so away from the Cueva del Indio, the Cave of the Indian, which is one of the more touristy caves, we walked down to see it. Unlike the other caves this cave is lit and has walkways and handrails to accommodate lots of tourist traffic. In addition to walking through the cave, there's a boat that takes you on a short ride through to see the various cave formations. The cost was $6. Okay, Havana. We saw a lot of Havana on foot without a tour, but we did pay for the hop-on, hop-off bus in Havana. It allowed us to see areas that were too far away to walk to, and also served as transportation to get to Fusterlandia. The cost was $20. Okay, Fusterlandia is the home of Jose Rodriguez Fuster, who is an amazing mosaic artist. We toured the outside of his home and garden, which is bright and colorful and busy, as you can see. In addition to his own home, he and his students have transformed his whole neighborhood with mosaics on the walls, parks, roofs, and everywhere. You can see his art on over 80 of the properties in the neighborhood. Okay, the Jose Marti Memorial is a museum dedicated to him, but also includes a 358-foot mirador where you can see the entire city. It reminded me of the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. That costs about $2. We did a lot of exploring the cities and towns for free as well, but because a big part of our visit was to provide economic support for our new Cuban friends, we actually looked for opportunities to spend money. This isn't our usual travel concept, but we were so good at it that we exceeded our planned amount for activities. We had budgeted $400 and we spent $555. Okay, accommodations. U.S. citizens aren't permitted to stay in the hotels in Cuba because all of the hotels are owned by the Cuban government. We prefer staying in Airbnbs anyway, so this didn't bother us at all. We stayed in Havana at the beginning and end of our trip with the same hosts. They even let us leave some of our things there during the week when we visited other places. We double booked our night in Varadero in case we decided to head back to Havana with our tour. That's why the nights we paid for added up to more nights than we had originally planned. We started out the trip with 3 nights in Havana for a total of $62, 1 night in Varadero for $34, 3 nights in Vinales for $75, and 5 more nights in Havana for $98. So we budgeted $244 and spent $269. So that's $25 more on accommodations than we had anticipated. Okay, in-country travel. We knew that our in-country travel budget would need to be somewhat flexible. I'm including just the base cost here, not what we added in tips. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, the taxi from the airport to our Havana Airbnb was $30. We booked this ahead of time through a guide for one of our other excursions that we were going to go on. I think it's normal to pay about $25, but it was nice to have someone there waiting for us when we arrived and fun to ride in a classic car. Our taxi from Havana to Cotorro was $25. We used the La Nave app, which is kind of like Uber, but just for Havana, to get a driver. He was super helpful and patient when we couldn't find the place we were looking for at first. On the way back from Cotorro to Havana, there were no cars nearby on La Nave and no taxis around, so we walked the first 10 kilometers, we like walking, and got a ride for the final 9 kilometers. We had budgeted $25, but it cost less because we walked more than half the way. The bus from Varadero to Havana. This was a bus trip I paid for ahead of time. It was charged in euros on my credit card because the transaction went through Spain, a workaround that lets some companies provide services in Cuba to still accept American credit cards. We took the same kind of bus from Viñales back to Havana. It was another bus trip that I prepaid in euros. Other smaller rides, we spent $40. We did a lot of walking, but there were a few other times that we needed a taxi. At the end of our trip, our taxi to the airport cost $15. Instead of taking a taxi, we took La Nave, which ended up being cheaper than the expected $25. So on in-country travel, we had budgeted $217 and spent $190. So that's $27 less on in-country travel than we anticipated. Okay, food was definitely the biggest wild card. In order to set the budget, I took the low-end cost from my research for each meal and let my spreadsheet do the math. Figuring $5 for breakfast, $7 for lunch, and $10 for dinner, I multiplied by 10 days and 2 people. I took the low-end estimate because we're not into fine dining and we don't drink alcohol. Still, I knew that even the low-end estimate would be more than we would actually spend. We don't require breakfast, and if we're busy, we can go without lunch too. Of course, this wouldn't work if we had our kids with us, but the two of us are pretty low maintenance when it comes to food. I also brought some instant oatmeal packets, instant mashed potatoes, and a few freeze-dried backpacking meals with us, which we ate on Sundays. Cuba doesn't have anything like grocery stores like we're used to, so that's why we brought meals with us. I included $80 for airport food to cover both ends of our trip, but we didn't actually expect to spend that. We're both much too frugal to ever be able to pay airport prices for food. I brought some trail mix, granola bars, and a few things from home, and those kept us from needing any airport food. Our best food was in Viñales, where we paid our host for her home-cooked breakfast. The breakfasts were $6 each, and her dinners were $5 to $9 each, depending on what the plate was. On their property, they have a garden and all sorts of fruit trees. Even though they only have electricity for 3 to 4 hours a day, she cooked the most delicious meals using charcoal. Food in Varadero and Havana was hit or miss. Some strange things and some good things. We handled food much differently in Cuba than we do on most of our trips. We didn't do any shopping. There was no going to the store to get food to prepare in our Airbnb. Grocery stores really aren't a thing in Cuba. Anything we ate was prepared for us. Our plan going into this was that we would eat at private homes and restaurants to support the Cuban people, but it really was the only way to eat anyway. We averaged 2 meals a day, though sometimes the meal was included in a tour or eaten at home with things that we brought with us. Also, we didn't need to buy water because we each brought this backpacking water filter with us. So we budgeted $620 for food and we spent $172. So that's $448 less on food than we anticipated. Souvenirs and tips. We brought some of our remaining pesos in various denominations to show our kids. That was our souvenir. We had lots of pictures and videos and stories, but we didn't buy any normal souvenirs to bring home. That really wasn't a thing that was offered anywhere. The tips that I'm including in this category are for our tour guides, drivers, and Airbnb hosts. We also tipped at every restaurant that we ate at, but I included those expenses with the cost of the food. Had I realized that we had extra money in this category, we would have tipped even more. I felt like we were tipping a lot, but it's tricky to keep track of everything on the go, especially when you're managing a foreign currency. We had money stashed in multiple locations, so we weren't sure exactly how much we had at any given moment, and we brought twice as much cash as we budgeted in case of an emergency, because in Cuba, there's no way to withdraw more cash or use credit cards if you're an American. So we budgeted $400 for this category, and we spent $196. So that's $204 less on souvenirs and tips than we anticipated. Okay, other expenses. These are the miscellaneous travel-related expenses that can add up quickly. Our Cuban visas were $50 total. Getting a visa for Cuba is easy and is done online for $25 a person. Travel insurance, $104. Mike doesn't really think travel insurance is necessary because our own health insurance should cover us even when we're traveling, but it gives me peace of mind and that makes it worth it. Extra luggage, $45. With my Southwest credit card, everyone on my reservation gets one checked bag for free, but we wanted to bring the maximum amount of donations, so we planned to each pay for an additional bag at $45 each. When we checked in our 4 suitcases, the agent said that we only needed to pay for 1 bag. For some reason, which we couldn't figure out even after asking the agent, both of Mike's bags were free. What a blessing. Airport parking, $132. We left a car in the long-term parking lot at the Sacramento airport for $11 a day for 12 days. Supplies, $175. In addition to the supplies that we brought and collected to donate in Cuba, we got some supplies that we knew that we would need. Some of them we gave away afterwards. We got water filters. These were great because they made it so we didn't need to buy bottled water, which is expensive and creates a lot of trash for Cuba. Water purification tablets, we brought these just as a backup, just in case there was a problem with our filters. Mosquito repellent, there is an outbreak of several mosquito-borne illnesses like chikungunya and dengue right now, so we wanted to be prepared. We brought single mosquito nets and a double mosquito net. When the power is out in Cuba, which is often, the AC and fans don't work, so you need to open the windows for air, and none of the windows that we saw had screens on them. We weren't sure which setup would work best, the singles or the double, depending on the Airbnb, so we brought both versions. Lanterns. Blackouts are normal in Cuba, so we wanted to be prepared. These can be charged by either plug or solar. Power bank. We wanted to be able to charge our phones even when the power was out. Cuban tourist SIM cards, $70. I forgot to add this into our original budget, but it was definitely important. This was the cost for 2 30-day SIM cards so that we could make calls and have internet where it was available in Cuba. VPN, $12. If you're using the internet in Cuba, you need a VPN to access the websites and apps that you're used to in the United States. Otherwise, many of them will be blocked. We used a 1-month subscription to NordVPN and then canceled it when we got back home. So all these extra expenses, we had budgeted $552 and we spent $588. So that's $36 more than we had anticipated. So the total cost that we had budgeted for 2 people for 11 days in Cuba was $2,748, and we spent $2,285. So we spent $463 less than we anticipated for the 2 of us. I always like it to break it down by person and by day because it makes it easy to compare across trips. Our trip to Cuba with everything included breaks down to $104 per person per day. Okay, now for the best part. As we planned our trip, we started collecting gifts and donations to bring to support the Cuban people. I made Amazon and Walmart wish lists with the things we most wanted to bring. We told our friends about our plan and they also gathered goods, bought from our wish list, and donated money. You can see here some of the donations that we gathered to bring to Cuba. I didn't even get them all in these pictures. It was an honor to share all of this with the people we met in Cuba. They were so grateful and felt so loved. Some of our donations went to church congregations, and each time the ladies would help divide up the supplies we brought for people in their congregations. We also gave things out to individuals that we met. In this picture, Mike is giving a package of fishing hooks to a man who was fishing without a pole, just a roll of fishing line, off the wall of the Malecon. He kissed it and gave great thanks. We connected with so many wonderful people and really fell in love with the Cuban people. We're planning to bring our kids this spring. That was the Christmas surprise that I've alluded to in my past few budget updates. That means we'll be able to bring even more suitcases full of medicines, medical supplies, personal hygiene items, and food to help the struggling yet resilient Cuban people. We would love for you to join us in this endeavor. If you want to help us support the Cuban people, we have an Amazon wish list that I'll link below. So what do you think? Would you ever want to go to Cuba? How do the costs compare with what you expected? Let me know in the comments.